Hi everyone, it's Olga. Welcome to BA Blog. There are lots of articles that teach you how to resolve the conflicts with your family, friends, and subordinates. But what if your opponent is more powerful than you? What if the conflict initiator is a client or your boss? What if it might cost you a job? So let's see how to deal with such type of conflict situations, how you can resolve them and sometimes even save your skin. The great irony is that the best way to win such type of conflicts is to avoid them in the first place. By getting into a conflict with a customer or a boss, you always lose, even when you seem formally win. By making your opponent say that he or she is wrong, you always lose, especially when it happens in front of other people. The defeated side always wants to get revenge, and it's only a matter of time when it would happen. The first rule here is always let your opponent to save face in public. If you can't avoid the conflict, do your best to come to agreement with your opponent one-on-one without witnesses. So if you are already in the middle of a conflict and your opponent provokes you by unreasonable requests or inappropriate behavior, do not react out of anger or out of any negative emotion. Remember, by letting your emotions out, you lose control over the situation. Take a deep breath and go to the balcony. Going to the balcony is an allegory of any action that would allow you to take a break so you can pull yourself together and calm down before you respond. It can be anything. You can say, I need to make a call and talk to my colleagues, or I need to talk to my boss and see what can be done. If there is no possibility of taking a break physically, just make a deep breath and count to 10 before you answer. It buys you some time to get your emotions under control and prepare a smart and safe response. The next rule is to let your opponent talk and listen carefully. Listen to understand, not to refute. Your task is to understand what are your opponent's underlying needs and interests. Why the person really conflicts. In other words, what does he or she really wants? Remember, needs are the base drivers that motivate human behavior, like need for respect or need for recognition. The customer might provoke you to conflict just because he or she needs a portion of attention. In other words, he or she needs to be heard and acknowledged as a person. To resolve the conflict, you need to separate the person from the problem and to fight the underlying reasons or satisfy the real needs if it is possible. For example, in software development, the client tends to dictate what features should be added to product when, as well as to give direct orders to developers and testers. In many cases, it leads to conflict between the client, project management, and development team, as well as waste of time and money. The reason is that the client wants to keep control over the budget, process, and people. So what can be done here? First of all, acknowledge your opponent's point of view. It will show your opponent that you truly listen and care. For example, before trying to reason your client, you say, I see your point. In this situation, I would react the same way. Remember, people are more likely to listen to us if we listen to them first. People are more likely to pay attention to us and respect us if we pay attention and respect them first. Second, ask clarifying questions. It's a great way to acknowledge your opponent's point and feelings. It will very likely calm him or her and even reduce amount of stress, at least partially. Coming back to our example with software development, the manager would ask questions like, Why is it important? What risks can you see? What happens if? Third, try honestly to see the problem from the other person's point of view. In other words, step into his or her shoes, at least for a while. Are his or her demands really unreasonable? Is there a way to satisfy your opponent's needs and meet your own interests? If the requirements are unreasonable and can't be met, then insist on using objective criteria and focus on joint interests. In our example, the objective criteria is the value the client gets for the money he pays. Accordingly, to agree with the client, the manager would insist on sticking to objective criteria such as money and time spent on development rather than personal comfort of the client or the team. Finally, try to invent several alternative ways of how the real needs and interests can be satisfied. Let your opponent to choose from proposed options. By involving your opponent in this way, you not only resolve the conflict, but you also let him or her think that the idea was his or hers. In other words, you let your opponent formally win by doing what you want him or her to do. So, coming back to our example, the manager would propose the client to take a part in planning and prioritization sessions before the features go into development, so that the client can see what features would be added to the product and where money goes. The manager would also propose to organize the demo sessions of implemented functionality as often as it is possible, so that the client can provide the early feedback and keep control over the product. From the other hand, the manager would do his best to isolate the development process from clients' interfere, as well as to protect the development team from pressure, explaining that it would lead to delays, rework, poor quality, and money loss. The next rule says watch your words, tone, and body language. Your tone and attitude means even more than your words. People feel lies. They can easily read what you really think from your facial expressions and your tone. If your body language and tone are inconsistent with your words, the message will not reach the recipient. Moreover, it may feel insulting to a person and even worsen the situation. Another useful tip: if your opponent is more powerful than you, then try to get support from other parties. In other words, try to build a winning coalition. Ask yourself who else shares your interests. Who else will be affected by this situation? Who has the power to resolve the conflict or at least to support you? The next rule says work on Plan B. Plan B is your best course of action if you don't reach an agreement. An alternative way to meet your own interests. For example, if you can't reach the agreement with your client and there is a risk he or she will escalate to your boss, then the plan B would be to talk to your boss first. You can at least protect yourself by providing the real facts and avoiding further misunderstanding. Finally, if you are wrong and the reason of the conflict is your mistake or your inappropriate behavior, then admit it quickly without hesitation. In some cases, the best way to resolve the conflict is just to say, "I'm sorry." I recommend that you admit your mistake, fix it, and learn from it rather than deny it. By denying your mistakes, you indirectly bring attention to it and worsen the situation around you. Having the courage to admit your mistakes and making an effort to fix them always works better for you. It doesn't damage your reputation, and it shows that you're an adult. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope it was useful. Don't forget to check the upcoming videos. Good luck and see you soon!